Hello again. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor is expected to meet the South African citizens evacuated from Sudan when they touch down at OR Tambo International Airport today. Department spokesperson Clayson Monyela joins us now for more details. Clayson, thank you very much for your time this morning. Perhaps let's start with some of the challenges and gains of this operation.
Well, thank you very much for having us on your platform. This has not been an easy operation to pull off. As you can imagine, in Sudan itself, the fighting continued, even despite attempts to have a ceasefire, which we called for as a South African government. So we had to get our diplomats who were also still stranded in Sudan to coordinate their fellow nationals who were worried about their safety, getting calls from family members, and coordinate an evacuation on the ground because the airspace was closed, airport damaged and not operational. And so we had to get buses and coordinate all of them and get them out of Khartoum. Went through several checkpoints managed by the two warring factions, which was a risk in itself. But we're happy to report that all the South African nationals that we know of are safely out of Sudan. The groups that we evacuated using buses have been facilitated to cross into Egypt. Again, that was not easy because some of these nationals of ours left their passports back in Sudan. They left in a hurry. So some were delayed at the border and were denied initially entering to Egypt. We had to negotiate with the Foreign Ministry in Egypt and coordinate. Our team from Egypt, led by Ambassador Mashimbi, was also on the ground to facilitate the entry into Egypt. So they are all there now. They've crossed into Egypt. We booked them into hotels paid for by the South African government. The government will now be paying for flight tickets to get them back to South Africa. There was another group of South African nationals that made it to Port Sudan. That group has also successfully crossed into Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. They were received in Jeddah by the South African Consul General with his team, and they provided on-ground support to our nationals. That group of 10, their flight tickets back to South Africa was paid for by their employer. They will be arriving this afternoon, Saturday, at OR Tambo International Airport just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd like to, just on behalf of government, appreciate the collaboration, partnership and support we got from Gift of the Givers, countries like Sudan itself, Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Because as I say, evacuations like this are not easy. We encountered many difficulties. There were a lot of frustrations along the journey. But we're happy to report that all South Africans that we know of are accounted for and final preparations are being made for them to return home.
I'd like for us to pick up on that point of all South Africans that you know of are accounted for. What is the protocol, if you will, whether you're traveling on holiday, whether you're traveling for work, when you go to another country on the continent? Must you present yourself at the South African embassy so that they know who or which South African is in that particular country?
This is a very good question because it allows us to share information with South Africans. We always make this call that if you are going to be traveling abroad as a South African, find out if there is a South African embassy in the country that you are going to. And if there is one, please let them know. Because you just never know. You may be in a situation of distress where you require support, where you require the embassy to assist you. And if we don't know that you are in a particular country, it becomes difficult to find you and assist you. So if it's possible, we would like to again reiterate that call. We've developed an app, by the way, Dudu. If you go into any of the app stores and search for DERCO Travel Smart app, you can download that onto your mobile device and use that to register with us. You can choose which information you want to make available to us, but it helps us to have a database of South Africans in foreign countries in case there is a situation like the one that we're talking about in Sudan, where we need to find you and help you, it just becomes very helpful. The second thing we advise for South African travelers is to get travel insurance because situations of distress differ. There are certain cases where, unfortunately, some of our nationals pass in foreign countries, and then you faced with a situation where you need to remove or rather repatriate the mortal remains of a family member for a decent burial at home. Travel insurances help in those cases. So this would be our call and advice to South African travelers. Let us know and get travel insurance. It just becomes helpful.
We spoke to Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman a little bit earlier on in the program, and he was mentioning the treatment of people by immigration officials in this situation, where some people were treated like criminals, and some instances people would be taking advantage of a situation, charging some $500 for people to board a bus so they can be taken to the next point. What are some of the lessons learned, right? And especially if we talk to other countries on the continent where such situations may possibly play themselves out in terms of safe evacuation of people?
Look, the first thing, before I deal with that question, let me just mention, because I forgot to mention this, that as part of evacuating South African nationals, we also assisted nationals of other countries in our region, SADC, Angolan nationals, Lesotho, as in nationals from Lesotho. I think there was one Zimbabwean, etc. So we're grateful that we're able to assist our fellow Africans, particularly from our region. This matter of people who take advantage of a crisis like this one to try and make a quick buck, I think it's unavoidable. I think in all the cases that we've dealt with, there will be chances like this. These are criminals who in the midst of suffering of people, see an opportunity to make a quick buck. What we can do from as government, which we're in control of, is to assist our nationals that we know of, get them out of harm's way, which we successfully did in this case. And we, again, appreciate the support of everyone and make sure that people come home. And matters of criminality have to be referred to law enforcement agencies. But we appreciate the partnership of the other countries that help us. Despite the fact that some of our people didn't have travel documents, we negotiated successfully with foreign ministries and facilitated travel, even in cases where it wasn't easy to do so.
Sure. You mentioned the group of 10 that a specific company is paying for their repatriation. The other group that the South African government is dealing with, what time can we expect their arrival?
Yeah, we will update the final details in terms of arrival times, as well as which airport they're going to use once we've firmed those up later today. But we can confirm that they are safe. We've booked them into hotels. We're finalizing the flight tickets, and we'll communicate that to the South African public.
Clayson, thank you very much for your time this morning. Clayson Monyela speaks for the Department of International Relations.